All right, starting with the top story, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Ismail Bakai says indirect nuclear talks with the US in Oman are still at an early stage and aren't expected to last long, according to state television. Iran and the United States have begun high-level indirect talks in Oman, aiming to revive stalled negotiations over Tehran's advancing nuclear program. These are the first such discussions under President Donald Trump's current term, with Iran's delegation led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the US side represented by Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. According to Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, the talks are taking place through Omani mediation, with each side in separate rooms and messages exchanged via Oman's foreign minister. The discussions are expected to focus on de-escalating regional tensions, potential prisoner swaps, and limited sanctions relief in exchange for nuclear curbs. According to analysts, Oman has long played a mediating role between Iran and Western countries, including previous successful efforts to secure the release of detainees. But Iran is approaching the talks cautiously, citing deep mistrust of Trump, who has threatened military action if no agreement is reached. The two sides have yet to agree on whether future meetings will be face-to-face or remain indirect. Prior to the talks, Araghchi met with Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi in Muscat to outline Iran's positions for the US side. Let's hear what Iran FM had to say.
تیمی که بنده را همراه میکنن از دوستان کاملا متخصص و مطلع در این حوزه خاص هستند که سابقه مذاکراتی هم در رابطه با همین بحث دارند و ما با به هر حال جدیت لازم شرکت کردیم. نیت ما رسیدن به یک توافق منصفانه و شرافتمندانه هست از موضع برابر و اگر طرف مقابل هم از همین موضع وارد شده باشه انشالله شانسی برای یک تفاهم اولیه که منجر به یک مسیر مذاکره.
All right, Mr. Daniel Roth, researcher, director, United Against Nuclear Iran, is joining us all the way from New York. Daniel, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us. Well, considering the volatility in the Middle East and considering that there is a war going on in the Middle East, how important is it for both of these countries, that's the United States and Iran, to work towards de-escalation?
Yes, good evening. I mean, I think from Iran's point of view, having been significantly weakened since October the 7th by Israel, having taken out much of its defensive capabilities, having decimated and maimed much of its terrorist proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and obviously the inauguration of a new, much tougher US president, much more hawkish on Iran, it sees this as an existential threat to the survival of its regime. So from Iran's point of view, essentially this is all about stalling. It's about coming to some kind of arrangement where the US is not going to actually threaten the regime's very survival. From the US point of view, because of all those things I just listed, it does see this as a real opportunity to drive home that principle that successive US administrations have had, that Iran will not acquire a nuclear weapon. And that means permanently, not just for 10 or 15 years under the terms of the JCPOA, the Obama deal. So that's where the two sides are coming from. As you can imagine, they are a long way apart, and that's why I don't hold out much hope of an actual agreement in Oman at this point.
Daniel, considering the fact that Iran has been a country that has been accused of, facilitating proxy wars, through a number of terrorist organizations, how palpable do you think is this nuclear threat?
Well, the threat is very palpable, despite what the regime will tell you. Their propaganda is, we have a fatwa prohibiting nuclear weapons. I mean, that is a huge misconception about what's actually being said inside Iran. I mean, just today we heard Iranian media saying, well, actually, the fatwa, if it even exists, only prohibits the use of nuclear weapons. It doesn't actually prohibit the production of nuclear weapons. So as you mentioned, Iran is the number one state sponsor of terrorism around the world. Every terrorist group in the Middle East is essentially financed and sponsored by Iran, by Tehran. You can imagine how bad things would be were Iran to acquire that nuclear weapon. That threat would always be hanging over the entire region. So yes, it makes sense for Iran to never explicitly say we're going to have a nuclear weapon. It's useful for them to be on the threshold at all times. So Iran does have enough to make crude nuclear bombs at this very moment. It may not have the technology to miniaturize them, to weaponize onto a ballistic missile right now, but that's certainly coming. And as I say, it's useful for Iran to be on the precipice.
Daniel, how realistic, for the lack of a better word, is it for the to come together to some sort of an agreement, considering the fact that since Donald Trump has taken office, all he's talked about is more or less an escalation, obliteration, as well as a tension with Iran?
I agree with your implication. I would be surprised if there is some accommodation, if there is some deal struck during these negotiations. President Trump, obviously, the author of Art of the Deal, he would like nothing more than to come to an agreement. But I think he himself is pretty clear-eyed in what this regime represents, which is, the main sponsor of terror, sowing discord around the region, if not the world. So yes, the prospects look dim, but the president is giving it his best shot.
Always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Moving on, Argentina's President Javier Milei says that the country